Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 23rd of December, 2018. And in this session, we are going to take a look at the ability to use MIDI controllers with the MixPre series of recorders from Sound Devices. Now, there are a couple of things that I think we probably need to kind of address up front. And first of all is why? Why would you ever want a big controller like this to work with your very small field recorder? And the answer is really that it makes it easier to create a stereo mix from all of your microphone input channels using a control surface. Of course, you can still record the individual isolated channels for each microphone independently, but you can also create a stereo mix track at the same time, and all of the changes you make to the faders here only affect the mix track. So in other words, say for example you have 4 different microphones, and we could just say we'd arm all 4 of those. What these faders do is choose how much of each of those individual tracks gets sent to the stereo mix. So for example, if you really only want to, at this point in time, be capturing just the first microphone, you'd have the fader forward. And for these other 3, we would pull them all the way back because we didn't want to capture anything from them. But then when this person starts talking, I can move the fader forward, so on and so forth. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why is that even useful? Can't I just do a mix in post? So I can record the individual microphone channels independent of each other as isolated channels. But then in post, I can go into my digital audio workstation. I can go into DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. I can go into Adobe Audition, Pro Tools, whatever, and do the mix myself. And the answer, of course, is you can do that. But in cases where you are live broadcasting, something like this can be very helpful. In cases where you aren't going to have a lot of time to turn around a piece, doing a mix is really helpful. And in big budget narrative films, oftentimes they're doing a mix as well because the mix is used with the dailies the next day. For those of you not familiar with the concept, a daily is where after each production day, the next morning, the editor puts together all of the things they shot the previous day, and they're going to need sound with the picture. And what they'll do is they'll take from the mixer just the stereo mix and put that with the picture that they shot the previous day. So those are some of the circumstances under which producing a stereo mix is really important. Next question is, how do you do this? Well, the newest firmware on the Sound Devices MixPre series, that's going to be the MixPre 3, 6, and 10T, as well as the MixPre 3M, 6M, and 10M. You just need to get the latest firmware. And the latest firmware as of the time of this recording is version 3.02. Now, version 3.00 is where they introduce the capability to work with MIDI controllers like this one, and we'll talk about which ones are compatible in a minute. But they've actually also, in that same week that they released that first one, they found some bugs, and so they've released some follow-up releases as well. So if for some reason you downloaded the 3.00, get rid of that and instead upgrade to the 3.02. That will make sure that you don't get any of those bugs. And one of them was actually looking like a pretty critical bug that I don't know if it was rare circumstances, you could potentially lose some audio. So make sure you get the latest version. Next up, what you do is, and actually let me just go ahead and illustrate this here. I'm going to unplug this for now. So this is just a regular USB. This is a USB, I think, B connector here in this case, and this is USB A. So all we need to do is actually plug this in and watch the MixPre's screen here. It says, oh, well, we found a MIDI controller. And so it set it up. You can see it took about a second to do that, not long at all. And you can see here we need to now adjust our fader here. Okay, there we go. There are actually 4 different MIDI controllers that are compatible with the MixPre series right now. This one here happens to be the Novation LaunchControl XL. And I'll go ahead and put links for the others down below. If you want to get into the details, they're all listed in the updated manual for your version of the MixPre. So just go ahead and download the latest version of the MixPre manual from the Sound Devices website, and it will have details on which of them are supported. And not only which of them are supported, but also what each of the controls on those MIDI controllers do as far as controlling the MixPre. Now, one question may come up is, why did you choose this particular one? The reason I chose this particular one is that it actually has more of the controls that I need for my type of work. So what I really liked about this is that you have a variety of different knobs or potentiometers here and a fader for each track, plus a couple of buttons for each track. And for me, that seemed like it would be probably the best way to go. Some of these I won't use a whole ton, but this one, for example, well, I'll get into what each of them does, but that's kind of the background on why I chose this particular one. This one runs about $159 US. There are some less expensive ones as well that are also compatible with the MixPre. Now on the MixPre 10T, we are using the USB-A port right here, and that is a little bit of a downside. It's nice that it's compatible, obviously, with these MIDI controllers, but what that means is you cannot also record a backup recording while you have the MIDI controller plugged in. Now, as soon as you're done shooting, you can pull this out and put a USB stick in there, and it will back everything up. So it's, you're giving up a little bit of functionality, I suppose, at some level. And another thing that also goes into the USB-A port are keyboards, but there is actually another way to do keyboards even when you're using this, and I'll talk about that a little later. All right, in this particular case, let's talk about what each of these controls do here. You'll notice here, first of all, these buttons are red here, and those can actually do a variety of things depending on what you have selected over here. So for right now, it's set to control whether or not that track is armed. That is to say, it's going to be recorded when we start recording. So right now I have none of them armed, but you can see just by pushing a button, I can say, oh, I'm going to record in this take. I know I'm going to get recordings of mics 1, 2, and 4. That just happens to be which actors are in this particular scene and this take, and so I can easily and quickly do that. Now, you can do that, of course, here as well, but it takes a little more time. You have to press in the channel knob for 1, arm it, press in the channel knob for 2, arm it, press in the channel knob for 4, and arm it. So this is a little faster. So that's one example. Now, these buttons on the bottom row can also do other things. If I wanted to solo a track while I was getting things set up and doing some gain staging, I could do that and say, hey, I just want to solo track number 4 right now, trying to get it set up. And that'll let me listen to just that one. Or if I'm in the middle of a take and I'm finding, hey, there's some weird crackling noise, I'm trying to figure out which one it is, I can solo the different mics really quick and see which one it's coming in on. So that's a pretty nice feature as well. There is also a mute. So if for some reason I wanted to quickly mute some of the microphones, I could do that as well. Say I want to get this one muted and that one muted. Or say, for example, I'm in between takes. I may just want to quickly mute all of them. Whoops. People are doing bathroom breaks and things like that. We don't want to hear it, so we can mute really quickly. Okay, so back on here. The next row of buttons here is actually track focus. What that means is I want to go into the channel menu for this particular channel, channel 1. I press this, and that takes us into our track 1 menu here, where I can set up various things. You'll notice here now, when I turn this, we're controlling the gain setting here. You can see it there and down here. So check, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see now I lost my meters. Now I'm way too hot, hitting the limiters. We probably want to be somewhere in that range right there. So that is the gain, or the trim, as they call it. Next up is, on a normal mixing board, this would next be the EQ section. In this case, it's actually the high-pass filter, which is actually quite similar. So you can see here as we tweak this, we can just change the frequency at which that high-pass filter comes in, or if I turn it all the way to the left, it turns it off. Normally, I'll run that somewhere in the 80 hertz range. Next one is the pan. So I can pan this channel all the way to the left on the stereo mix, or all the way to the right on the stereo mix, just like that, as you can see. And that works nice and easily. There is a nice little ident here, right in the middle, where it kind of, you can feel it a little bit. And so that gets it's so you're right in the center here, which works nicely. And of course, this is the fader. So you're actually not hearing the mix because I needed to record on a separate device, long story. But in any case, being able to tweak around all these controls and be able to record with it at the same time just wasn't going to work out for a variety of reasons. You can't show you all the features if I'm recording with this at the same time. So that's why I'm recording on a separate one. But anyway, when I am recording and I want to, say, for example, I'm recording 2 people, I'm doing an interview like we're going to demonstrate here. What I would do is I would be able to fade back the person who's not talking and fade up the person who is talking. And actually, I don't have any input on this channel right here, so that's why you're not seeing anything come in. But now, as I pull that back up, you can see it's picking up my voice again and putting that in the stereo mix. So The interesting thing about these faders, these are, I think, 60 millimeter linear faders. The interesting thing is that the 0 point actually is on the marking number 6. I don't know why. I don't know if there's some way to calibrate these. I haven't figured that out yet. This is brand new, first time I've used it. So I'm really not sure why we're not able to see that really quickly. But in any case, let's go ahead and give you a sample interview so you can hear how this works. All right, so today we're going to do a little interview here with Emma Judd. Emma was marched with the Battalion Drum and Bugle Corps in the 2018 season. And Emma, thanks for coming to talk with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
So first of all, we have, there are a couple of things that are kind of interesting. So first of all, tell us about your experience marching with the Drum and Bugle Corps. What did you like about it? What appeals to you about that? And why do you want to keep doing it?
So the fun thing about marching drum corps for me is that I get to, well, it's a performance opportunity over the summer, and it's with, 153 other people that you'll become really, really close with. So part of the cool stuff that I learned there was kind of how to work with other people, since I'm an only child, and become really close with other people my age. So that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. And there must have been something about playing instruments and marching around fields and stuff too.
Yeah. So it's honestly, drum corps is like for the marching nerd. If you don't like marching band, you're never going to end up there. So I don't know why I like marching band. It's just like one of those things in life that you find that's super aesthetically pleasing, and you're like, I got to do that. So for me, drum corps is one of those things.
Okay, there are a couple of questions that I certainly had coming into this whole thing about how this works with the MixPre. Let me go ahead and address each of those in turn. Number one, does it work with the remix and re-record feature on the MixPre? If you're not familiar with what those do on the MixPre, go ahead and check this episode. I put a link in the upper right-hand corner of the video here. This is a really nice feature that allows you to take a recording that has isolated channels, that is to say you recorded each of the microphone inputs independently, in advanced mode on the MixPre, and then I want to make a new mix of them. So say, for example, when I was recording a stereo mix, but I didn't quite get the fader. I didn't fade up in time, and I didn't fade back in time, and so it was a little messy, and I want to redo it. Well, it's a little bit difficult to do that with these knobs. They're kind of cramped, to be honest, if you use them as faders. However, if I use this, it makes it a lot easier, and it does work with that remix feature, so that's super nice. Does it work with a Wingman app? You can see that it does. And this is actually a really interesting combination here with the Wingman app on an iPad, the MixPre, and the MIDI controller. The nice thing about having this here is now I can enter the metadata over here, and I can connect a keyboard to my iPad. I can do that in one of two ways. I can use an Apple wireless keyboard to connect via Bluetooth, and I confirm that that does work with the Wingman app here. You can also use a wired keyboard. If you use the USB to Lightning adapter that you can buy from Apple, then you can use a standard USB keyboard and connect that directly to the iPad here. That also works. I also confirmed that. So that's how you can get around the issue of, not having the USB-A port available for a keyboard. You can instead use the Wingman app. Now, I assume that that also works on Android. I probably need someone who uses Android to confirm that just to be sure. So if you do know that, go ahead and leave a comment down below. We'd love to know about that. Next question, does this work when you're using the MixPre 10T as an audio interface? And the answer to that is yes. You're going to connect the MixPre to your computer using the USB-C port here. That leaves the USB-A port open, so yeah, you can still use this and do all of these controls that we talked about here. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, there are also some programmable buttons here too. And in fact, the way I set it up is this first one is going to record. You can see we started recording. So I set that up as record. I set this one up as stop. And then you have this shift key here called device. If I hold that down and press back, you can see that gives me the undo option or the false take option. And so I can undo that take. You can also record, or you can also program other functions to these buttons. Go ahead and check the user manual for your MixPre, and it will show you all of the options available. So there's a quick overview of using a MIDI controller with your MixPre as a control surface and in conjunction with the Wingman app. I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do that. Get out there and make some great sound. We'll talk to you soon.